Hello and welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board meeting for September 15th, 2020. My name is Matt Cota. I'm the chair of the South Burlington Development Review Board. With me is city staff Marla Keene and Delilah Hall. Also, Development Review Board members Don Filbert, Jim Langdon, John Wilking, Mark Bear. Thank you for those in attendance and those on the phone. In all opportunities, members of the public will have an opportunity to both listen and speak, just as they do in any regular meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and it will also be available to the public to view at a later date. Anyone who wishes to speak, either during the public comment session or after we hear from the applicant about the proposal, can do so by digitally raising their hand, by saying their name, or by adding their comments to the comment section in the chat box. If you look on the top right of your screen, for those that are logged in, there's a little squiggly box where it looks like where you can click on that little circle, the lasso, and that's where you can digitally sign in, the sign-in sheet. You can also sign in by emailing something to Marla Keene at mkeene, M-K-E-E-N-E @sburl.com to let us know that you are here. And the reason why you want to do that is because you will have the opportunity to be a party if you should contest any decision made by this board, and you'll receive information about upcoming hearings. So if you're interested in a specific issue, please digitally sign in some way and let us know what topic you're here for. The first item on the agenda tonight is additions or deletions or changes in the order of agenda items. I don't have any. Does anyone on staff or on the board have any additions or deletions? Seeing none, the second item on the agenda is announcements. Are there any announcements from the board or the staff? Seeing none, I would go to agenda item number 3, which is comments and questions from the public on any item that is not on the agenda. Is there any member of the public that would like to make a comment? If so, you can say your name or enter your name into the chat box and say you'd like to make a public comment. Okay, hearing none and seeing none, I'll go right to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is continued and preliminary final plat application SD 2022 of the Burlington International Airport and BTV Hotel LLC to amend a previously approved plan for an airport complex. The amendment consists of constructing a 111-room hotel near the northern end of the existing parking garage at 1200 Airport Drive. Who is here for the applicant?
Adam
Larry
Torts.
Lackey, Airport.
Chris
Okay, I heard
Jenkins,
Larry.
Stantec.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys.
Anyone else?
Adam Torts with SE Group, landscape architect.
Hi, Adam. Anyone else? Okay, this is continued preliminary and final plat application. Larry, Adam, Chris, you were with us at previous hearings, so you do not need to be, you're still sworn in. Let's step through the additions, edits that have been done since we last met. Just to briefly go over what this project is for those listening. Burlington International Airport seeking preliminary and final plat approval to amend a previously approved plan for an airport complex. The amendment consists of constructing a 111-room hotel near the northern end of the existing parking garage at 1200 Airport Drive. We last heard this project on July 21st. Board began the hearing but did not complete the review of all the applicable criteria. Before continuing the hearing, the board provided feedback to the applicant that they should revise their plans to retain a greater number of existing trees. The applicant has made modifications to reflect this request, and the initial section of the staff comments reflect the updated plans. The remaining staff comments included herein are unchanged from the July 21st staff comments. So should we start out with that, Larry, Chris, or Adam, whoever wants to go first or lead the, we did provide, before we continue this hearing, direction that we should try to save as many trees as we can. What have you come back with? Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Matt, and we can, I think, start working our way down through the review comments. We have resubmitted information and updated plans that have reduced the number of trees removed. Originally, we were removing about 35 trees, and with the revised submission, we are removing 27, 2 of which are ash trees that are within the city right-of-way. We did go out and meet with the city arborist to walk the property and assess the trees. And those 2 trees are shown as removed based on Craig's recommendation. And the applicant is, offering to replace those 2 trees on the city's behalf. So those 2 trees are included in the 27 that we're proposing to remove.
Okay. Let's step through the staff comments before we return to the trees, if that's all right with everybody. Staff comment number 1, we're talking about the path. The purpose of the realigned path appears to be to create a larger front yard for the airport hotel. Staff considers the user experience of having a recreation path meander along the front of the hotel to be equally, if not more appealing than having a large lawn area. It recommends the board direct the applicant to retain the path in its current alignment, yielding a more interesting path. To retain the path in its current alignment, yielding a more interesting path and a retention of a greater number of mature trees. As is previously stated, city's landscaping standards are intended to result in a mature canopy over time, and the value of mature trees can only nominally be replaced by planting of immature trees. Chris, could we see a picture, or I should say Delilah, see a picture of that site? Get us very oriented in terms of what the path is, what it could be, what trees are saved, the 8 trees are saved under this realignment or not, or removed. Get a better idea of what we're looking at.
Which is the best document for that, Adam? Is it the just the plans, or is it the stuff that was sent later with the trees and stuff?
It could be the original LA 201 is the rendered site plan that gives us the best view of that. It would be the colored plan once you hit that in the set. These look like mostly the civil drawings.
So it's page 9 of
There you
what's
go.
up right now.
There you go. So Matt, to respond to the path realignment, on the bottom of the sheet, we are proposing to realign a portion of the path. The primary driver of the realignment is actually the pedestrian crossing at the new hotel entry. Currently, the path, and you can see it kind of in light gray near the proposed light pole on this sheet, crosses kind of inward of the property and the access drive currently, where there's a gate to access into the parking lot. And we believe that the continuing that alignment of the path and that pedestrian crossing, with this now being an entry to the hotel, is not ideal. And so we are proposing to bring that pedestrian crossing closer to the threshold of the drive. So that's the primary driver. The path realignment does contribute to the removal of 4 trees.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. The yellow line indicates where the path currently is, correct? I don't know who drew that, but yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So to put it where it is on the plan, you had to remove 4 trees.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I think in the original submission, there was comments about having too much open lawn between the recreation path and the proposed outdoor patio. So we have added additional landscaping between the path alignment and the outdoor patio. So there's not I wouldn't really consider that a large lawn area as currently designed. And then there's also just the distance from the pathway to the outdoor patio itself. Currently as proposed, there's only about 14 feet between the edge of pathway and the retaining wall that holds up the patio, which is not excessive. And if we kept the path in its current alignment, that would obviously become much tighter. And so, we do feel that realigning the path improves the project and improves the pedestrian safety for the crossing. We have explored the idea of continuing to give the path a meandering character, which was submitted today. And that allows the path to have some movement to it. It would still we would still need to remove the 4 existing trees. I won't speak for the airport. Maybe Larry can speak to this piece, but in terms of maintenance, I know there was a comment about maintenance of the path now that the path is within the city's right of way, because this realignment does move the path into the city's right of way. But and Larry, perhaps you could speak to and acknowledge that it's my understanding the airport maintains this pathway to the vast majority of it, and I would anticipate that you would continue maintaining that. But if you could,
yes, yes. That's a
So-
yes from Larry. Thank you, Larry.
So
Okay.
that is that's kind of the response and approach that we've taken to the path realignment.
Yeah, no, I understand that answer, and I understand staff's concern that is there a way to have a meandering path and save trees. I understand both sentiments. I don't have a strong opinion on this, but I'd like to hear from the board members. Don, John, Jim, Mark, Melissa, the value of the path as currently on the plan, or of meandering and saving 4 trees.
We could bring, and sorry to interrupt, we could bring
No
up
problem.
the supplemental that was submitted today that shows the kind of slight meander that we've added. That it,
Sure.
if the board preferred
Let's look at
having
it.
some movement, we could do that. Thank you, Deval.
But even your slight meander, you're still removing 4 trees. Is that correct, Adam?
That is correct.
I think one other graphic we should likely share too to kind of help facilitate the conversation is we've shown what we present. We have a rendering of what we presented last time, and just after that, there's a rendering of what the improvements we've made, and I think it shows that we've made some pretty substantial improvements since last time we were here. Those were submitted, say 2 weeks ago, right ahead of the paper deadline submittal. Yeah, those 2 graphics right there. So you can see this graphic is showing what was proposed previously. And then the next graphic after will show you what we had updated it to.
Hold on a moment, folks.
You're a document wizard. It's a lot to keep track of.
So is that the way we're looking at there? Is that path the way that it is on the plan, or is that the meandering path? Slightly meandering path. No, that's the one on the plan, isn't it?
That's the
That is
path on the plan.
Yeah, that is the straight alignment in the original submission that was more minimalist in its landscaping between the path and the wall. And if you look at the current plans, more in character with what is there today in terms of having vegetation on both sides of the path, a mix of deciduous and evergreen, and creating the canopy experience that I think Marla referenced in her staff review.
And this includes saving a number of trees just by, we did some regrading to make sure that would happen.
So that is in the 8 trees that you've saved, that you're talking about that regrading. Correct. We're still at 8 trees. Whether you meander it slightly or you keep it the way it is.
Yeah.
You're willing to do both, but you're saying you're not going to remove. You can't keep more trees, even with the staff's comment. Okay. Does the board have any comments regarding what do we do with the path in front of the hotel?
I prefer the meandering. I think it's a little more natural, particularly given what the rest of the path is. But I'm fine with the depth of the trees on the updated submittal.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would agree with John. I like the meandering approach.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of falling in that line as well. I like the slight meandering, but this updated submittal of the landscaping, with the heavily, planted variety of trees and shrubs, I think that it'll be fine. It'll look nice.
Great. Staff comment number 2, the applicant continues to calculate replacement value based on original planted size. We're talking about tree replacement. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to update their calculations to reflect the size at the time of removal and provide commensurate replacement landscaping. Now, of course, because we have MS 2001, the master landscaping plan for the airport, you don't have to figure out how you're going to shove dozens of small trees on this little lot, which I hope is a relief. But we have to have the staff comment is you have to have the correct caliper size in order to know what we need to compensate for else on the airport property. Do I read that right?
Right, and I would just point out that this was Craig's comment, and Craig almost never says anything like this. Craig's a pretty close to the chest kind of guy, so I think it's serious when he brings it up.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
And
Does the applicant have a response to that?
we do. A couple of things. First is that we followed in sync with the methodology to calculate replacement value consistent with the previous application, which is based on the original size in today's market. And we had reached out to staff, to Marla, to kind of confirm that direction here was the right approach. So that's the approach we've taken. And we believe that's consistent with what the previous approval accepted and approved. And secondly, if you consider the alternate approach, which we discussed in our previous application also, it would lead to a replacement value of the existing trees that is well in excess of the current landscaping budget. The current landscaping budget of this project is $117,000. The applicant is exceeding that. Our budget is in the $150,000 range. And to have the replacement value of the existing trees equal and exceed that seems inconsistent with the previous approach that was approved for the previous application.
But it's not the value of the trees, right? I mean, we're talking about the size of the trees.
Well, the calculation that Craig, I believe, is recommending considers the size of the trees today. There's a number of criteria that are applied to that in terms of their character, their health, their location, which then creates a value of that tree's replacement today. And that's not consistent with what the previous methodology we used and that was approved for the previous application.
Just one thing to clarify so everyone understands why that was done that way. The big reason that was done that way was because all of those trees on the other side, and it's the same situation on this side, were under a previous permit from back in 2009 and then updated again in 2009, 2010 timeframe. So that's just something important to note why it's different than most scenarios where we're not coming onto a site with just a bunch of existing trees. We're talking about trees that were already a part of a previous permit application and replacing those for the most part. If there are some that aren't part of that previous permit application, then we likely evaluated those as we would normally, looking at them as evaluating their costs the way that Adam had just spelled out.
I think the difference.
Adam, when you're talking about, just want to clarify, when you're talking about the previous approval, are you talking about when the hotel was on the south side of the parking garage? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I think the difference here is a couple things. One, the methodology that Adam's describing is a methodology that the board has accepted, but is not required by the LDRs, taking into account, the condition and the location and the species. That the LDRs don't prescribe a specific methodology for calculating the value. It's just that's a methodology that's available and the board has accepted. So, if you had a different thing, you'd be welcome to present that to the board, obviously. But that being said, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that methodology. When the airport had the hotel on the other side of the parking garage, the trees were almost in their second. I guess you were comparing it at that time to, this is hard to explain. You were comparing it to a second permit value. So those trees had been transplanted once. They were already like 6 to 10 inch trees, and they hadn't significantly changed, I don't think, to today. Whereas in this situation, we're comparing, a tree that was planted at a 6 foot height that's now a 12-foot tree, and that's a much more significant change. It would, also at that time, MS 2001 hadn't existed, and MS 2001 was specifically to ease the board's discomfort with the fact that, gosh, every time the airport has an application, we don't know what to tell them with their landscaping plan because there's no sort of vision, and now there is this vision, and the point of that overall landscaping plan is to provide a pre-approved outlet for construction of landscaping to create an adequately landscaped environment consistent with the LDRs.
But what I'm struggling is we have, now that we have MS 2001, what we're discussing is we're discussing what is the value placed on the trees that are being removed, and what is the value being placed on the landscaping that will be done outside of this hotel property on the airport, right? Is that the sticking point?
Exactly, yep.
And so we've got two different numbers, and I'm not quite sure how to resolve it here.
So what the applicant has done is the applicant said, at the time that these trees were planted, they were 6 foot pines. I'm making that number up, but I probably can find the real numbers. And now they're 18 foot pines or 12 foot pines. And the comment from Craig is, well, you're replacing a 12 foot pine, then you're not replacing a 6 foot pine. So the replacement value should be, and this is how the board has always done things, the replacement value should be the value of the tree today, not the time it was. Because, as we noted, a mature tree has a lot more value to the city than an immature tree.
So the value of the mature tree or the tree at removal.
Right.
Marla, one of the things that we've always offered was if you didn't want that and you had a 6-inch caliper tree, you could replace it with 3 2-inch. Obviously, a 6-inch caliper tree is going to cost a small fortune. 3 2-inch trees, probably you know, under $1,000. So are we offering that as an option?
Meaning establishing that as the value, John, whereas rather than just doing the math a different way, rather, you know, 18, say,
Yeah.
we're replacing an 18-foot tree, we're not replacing a 12-foot tree. So what it would cost to have 6 3-foot trees? I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a math on the
I'm
fly
just
here,
saying,
but
I'm just saying rather than do it on value, you could do it on caliper. And if they're taking down a gross caliper of 40 inches over, you know, the dozen trees that they're taking down, they replace it with 40 inches of trees. It could be 22-inch trees,
That makes
or it
sense
could
to
be
me.
two 20-inch trees.
it's just a different, it's a way to come to a lower number, but yet still be consistent.
Yeah, and it
With
gets a
what
lot
we
more
have
of the
said in the
landscaping.
past. Yeah, we have.
It gets a
don't-
lot more of the,
Yeah.
I wonder how that, John, I totally get what you're saying, and I totally think that that's a normal thing to do. I think that it becomes a little bit more, requires a little bit more thought in the case of this overall landscaping plan, because they have this pre-approval to do a specific thing. If they could fit 40 inches of trees into the approved overall landscaping plan, then sure, go for it. But if that doesn't fit with what that approval is, I wonder, and this is a genuine wonder, not like a, I think you're wrong kind of wonder. I wonder how one would reconcile those two things.
yeah, it's hard to transition caliper trees to fence line or stone installation or whatever. I agree. They really have to choose how they're doing that. But I would offer it as an option if it works.
Well, if anything, we're consistent with judging the replacement at the existing caliper and not the when it went in the ground caliper, and giving a little leeway to the airport to work on those numbers. I don't know. Seems to be a compromise. At least I think it's a compromise.
I think just as a point of reference, the existing trees to be removed based on the survey represent 276 caliper inches. So if you
Those are the
take,
27 trees times whatever gets you to, or whatever, 276 divided by 27.
Correct.
Right, okay, yeah.
so if you equate kind of John's idea of using 2-inch caliber trees to replace that, it would require 138 trees to replant. Is that, if I understand John's methodology in line?
Yeah, Adam, I mean, historically, this has occurred quite a few times. I used to complain about it all the time because I've done it many times where a 14-inch or a 20-inch tree comes down and I have to replace it with 7 to 10 new trees. That's the way it is. And the other choice is to say, okay, what's a 10-inch tree that's 25 feet tall costs to replace it? That's a much bigger number.
Yeah.
Going back to this the previous permit idea, like I said, under the last application, got a little bit of an echo. Under this, you know, we basically followed the same protocol. I know Marla had brought up, yeah, there was some transplanting, but there were a number of existing trees under our previous application that were just existing. They were, you know, maybe 6-8 inches in diameter, and we replaced that. We gave them a value as what they were planted at, because we've already, you know, it's fair to the applicant because back when they did it, we've already paid that money and we're just replacing them and paying that money again.
That's not the way it works.
No, I know.
I'm just, I've been down. let me just say, if we made that decision, we made a mistake. And if you go back and you want to build the hotel there, I think you're all set. But otherwise, I think it's time for us to move forward. This is the way we do it.
I didn't know if there was a different technique for previously permitted trees versus just existing trees.
No. All right,
I think it
shall we
would
move
be,
on?
if we get direction, if that's the methodology that we will follow, if there's kind of agreement on that methodology, similar to our previous application, we did have off-site planting that followed the script of the larger master plan, and we would propose to follow that similar methodology and work with the staff to ensure that we're meeting the replacement value and that it is in alignment with the overall airport's master planting scheme.
Yeah, I think that works. You get 276 total caliper inches you're replacing, you're removing. What's the value of replacing it? And obviously, there's different ways to calculate that value number, but that would be consistent with our practices.
I assume the
This is
board
Larry. I
would
got
be
a quick
okay-
question.
Go ahead, Larry.
Sorry about that. And maybe if this is for Chris, if it's that many caliber inches, how far are we already there with what you're proposing under the new program? I mean, how much difference do you have to make up? Or do you know?
Well, I think this is, Larry, this is my understanding, and I guess Marlo or Matt, you could correct me if I'm incorrect, but that the replacement value is in addition to the landscape budget of the project.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
the landscape plan adjacent to the hotel is meeting the landscape budget requirement. It was also meeting our original take on the replacement value, but this would change that. So we'll work with Marla to address that.
Just before we close the subject, I assume the board would be okay with, a hybrid between the different acceptable solutions. They do some in caliper and to the extent that the approved overall plan works with it, and then some in, say, fence that's part of the approved overall plan.
Yeah, that's my
And this
feeling,
is
Marla.
on Wells. How do the two ash trees that we're doing kind of as a favor weigh into this calculation?
I think we can take a look at whether those were part of an approved landscaping plan, assuming that they are not, that those wouldn't be part of the calculation.
Because we can certainly leave those in place, is what I understand, right?
Yeah, and if the city arborist asks you to take them down just because he thinks you're a nice guy, we wouldn't require you to replace them.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Item number 3, still dealing with landscaping. With consideration for the additional required value for the replacement trees, staff recommends the board require the applicant to use the approved elements of MS 2001 rather than providing additional landscaping on site. That's understood, correct?
Yes.
Okay, number 4, staff further recommends the board review the proposed planting plans and determine if the proposed pavers, stone wall, ornamental grasses, and perennials further the landscaping purpose and where they do not. Require the applicant to provide landscaping approved in MS 2001 in lieu of those elements of the landscaping plan which do not further the landscaping purpose. All right, Adam or Chris, do you want to show us your stone wall, ornamental grasses, perennials,
Matt,
pavers?
the reply would be, again, the methodology remains consistent with the previously approved application, which included those elements in the landscape budget. We believe the site is well landscaped and meets the intent of section 13.06. The landscape budget as submitted is in excess of the requirement by approximately $40,000. And we've submitted a landscape maintenance document to outline the seasonal requirements, which we previously discussed as part of the previous application also. So we feel in combination, the inclusion of those elements into the required budget is in alignment with the ordinance.
And we have, as a board, approved non-trees and shrubs as part of the landscaping budget, but it's not, I would describe it as not automatic. So I understand that we approved it in the past, and I have no problem with it this time around.
Well,
It's not automatic. The board has to review it in terms of whether it's applicable in this case. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Matt, the questionable ones here are the unit pavers in the front entry, potentially not the patio, but when you're talking about an entry area that's off of pavement, it's not typically landscape. Mark, you can jump in, but the dry laid stone wall, I have no problem with. That's a landscaping feature, but I do have issues with the unit pavers. So I think this budget is overblown as far as what actually landscape.
No, I agree with you, John, that yes, the loose laid stone wall, the things that are ornamental and decorative and that are aesthetically enhancing, but the pavers, which are essentially patio and entranceway stuff, I would say, you're over, great, but you're over because there's quite a few things that are included in it that are outside our normal scope, but we have gotten flexible. So I really wouldn't be going to how over your budget is with the inclusion of all those items.
So what I'm hearing is stone wall, grasses, perennials, fine, pavers, no, take them out of the budget. Is that what I'm hearing from the board? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question for the board. This is Marla. So, Chris was just saying, not Chris, Adam was just saying they're over budget by roughly $20,000. I think that's what the number was. Obviously when they go in, look into the replacement value, that's going to shift. If they're not going to get credit for these pavers, we may see a plan come back that just has concrete. Is the board going to say, gosh, your landscaping plan is terrible? I want to make sure that, because this paver thing, it's allowed in the form-based code for the value above and beyond the minimum. Do the pavers add to the plan? It sounds like Mark and John feel like it doesn't. So that leaves, want to make it clear that the applicant can say, okay, then I'm going to go with regular concrete for this. The board's not going to say this is terrible landscaping plan.
So you're wondering if we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah.
Marla, I would say to you, if they want to put pavers underneath their canopy where somebody drives up, God bless them. That's not landscaping. That's your entryway. If they want to put pavers in the patio area, I would consider it. And that's what I said earlier. I think it depends on whether it actually impacts the landscaping or whether it impacts the driveway. And the driveway is not landscaped.
Is that clear direction, applicant?
I think that's very clear.
All right, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to comment number 5. Talking about the drive aisle. The applicant has proposed a 19.28 wide drive aisle behind the proposed surface parking near the hotel entry. The minimum required standard is 22 feet. 15.12M states the following: modifications or requirements. Administration officer or developer review board may approve minor modifications to the parking lot dimensions as specified in table 13.2, where the applicant can demonstrate the necessity of modifications and safety of the motor vehicle and pedestrian circulation are retained. Comment is, The pedestrian safety is not impacted by the reduction from 22 to 19.28. However, staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant why they believe the reduction is necessary. Staff considers a reduction of 2.75 feet to be significant and likely result in unsafe parking conditions. Recommends the board require the applicant to reduce the requested modification. So if the applicant could help us understand why you propose 19.28 rather than 22 feet.
Yeah, I can take this one. It's going to be pretty straightforward. The dimension was actually from those brick pavers surrounding the porte-cochere area. So the actual width is 25 feet. We actually needed more width than the 22 because we needed to do some turn. We needed to make sure vehicles could do a full turn. So, and it's actually Marriott's standard to have 25 feet in front. So we gave them 25 feet, not the 19.28. And I believe I had submitted an updated plan showing that, correcting that dimension, just to clarify.
Okay, so we are not 19.28. We are 25 feet, and that will be
Exactly.
updated in the plan.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
moving on.
it should have been updated already, but I
Okay.
thought I sent
Well,
it
let's move on to lighting. Good. That's great. Move on to lighting. The applicant is proposing a new pole-mounted fixture near the entrance drive, which results in lighting levels somewhat in excess of 0.3 foot candles beyond the property line. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant whether fixture A1 can be adjusted to better comply with the foot candle requirements of Appendix A, that lighting levels do not exceed 0.3 foot candles beyond the property line. Is that doable?
Matt, we have relocated the light pole, which was submitted today, to eliminate the 0.3 foot candle beyond the property line. That was occurring down
Okay.
where the pedestrian path realignment occurs. And we have also previously submitted photos of the existing airport site lighting that we're relocating as part of the project, and assert that they are downcast and shielded fixtures.
Okay, great. Similarly, comment 7, existing light pole, no information provided about the existing light pole to be relocated. Maybe you can show us that on the map, on the plan. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to provide documentation of existing light bulb to be relocated, indicating it's downcast and shielded. If not, staff recommends the board not allow the applicant to relocate the light. Instead, require them to use a new compliant fixture. Is that what you're saying before about that's going to be downcast, or is this a different pole we're talking about?
No, we have submitted photos of the existing lights. The existing lights are, relocated very minimally, and we assert that they are downcast and shielded fixtures.
Hey,
Okay,
Adam,
great.
where is that? What sheet is that shown on? I'm not seeing it.
It was, I think that those photos of the existing fixtures, Marla, were a supplemental from Chris on the previous, not as part of this round, but our first supplemental.
Okay, thanks. I'll take a look.
I'm happy to forward you the email.
Oh, I'm sure I have it. I just didn't catch it. I'll make sure I catch
Okay,
it
that's
and
it
make
for-
a decision.
Thanks, Marla. That's it for staff comments. You'll follow the stretch energy code. You'll have bicycle and parking storage, and you'll remove all signs from the plan. And that's it on this. Is there any other questions from the applicant for the board or staff, or any other questions from the board for the applicant before I go to public comment?
I think one thing I just want to know is this landscaping budget and this master, so likely what we're going to, if we do go over budget, we're likely going to contribute to the master plan. What do you guys, what is the protocol for, follow-up hearings, or is that a condition of approval that we put enough money into that? Or do we have to
It
say
does
where
need to be
it's
part
gonna
of
go?
this approval. So you need to submit a plan showing what you're going to do and what that budget's going to be.
Okay.
And Chris,
but-
we, sorry, Marla. Chris,
No,
we
go ahead.
committed to start down at the intersection of Williston Road and Airport Drive.
Okay.
So that's where we'll be working. So to start.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this proposal? If so, please say your name or enter your name into the chat box function. Okay, hearing none, then Marla, tailing off what Adam was just talking about, we can, if we close this with we either close this with conditions or we continue.
You have to
No, we
continue.
can't close the condition. You
Right.
continue.
Adam,
What's
how
the
long
date?
do you need?
Say again?
How long do you need?
How long do you need?
Not very long.
Can you get it to me by next? Let's see. Let me look at the calendar. Can you get it to me by the 23rd? 1 week.
Yes.
Okay. Then I would recommend continuing to October
Mhm.
6th, which fills our October 6th agenda.
Okay, I move that we continue SD 2022 1200 Airport Drive preliminary final plat application to October 6th. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John. And roll call. Don,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mark,
No.
Aye.
and chair votes aye, 6-0-0-0, or 1, absent Brian. Okay, thank you very much. See you on October 6th, guys.
Thank you.
Adam, Larry.
Thank
Chris.
you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yep, you too. Okay, now we move to the fifth item on the agenda, which is continued in preliminary plan application SD 2016 of O'Brien Farm Road LLC for the next phase of a previously approved master plan for up to 458 dwelling units and up to 45,000 square feet of office space. This phase consists of 6 multifamily residential buildings with a total of 342 dwelling units, of which 48 are proposed inclusionary units, an additional offset of 48 market rate units for a total of 390 dwelling units and underground parking and 3,500 square foot of commercial space at 255 Kennedy Drive. Who is here for the applicant?
Evan Langfeld from O'Brien Brothers.
Hi, Evan.
Jeff Hodson, Wagner Hodson Landscape Architecture.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Good.
Anyone else?
You're
Okay.
on mute.
Amy
Andrew.
Demetrowitz from the Champlain Housing Trust.
I'm sorry. Could you say your name again?
Amy Demetrowitz from the Champlain Housing Trust.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Okay, so this is the fourth, for those watching at home, this is the fourth preliminary plat hearing that we've held for this project. In addition, there was a sketch plan hearing, at least one. We're on round 5 now with this project, and depending on what happens tonight, whatever happens tonight, it still has to go through a next round of approval called final plat. So we've gone over this project, and we have more to go here tonight. But we're going to address some specific questions brought up by staff and discuss it with the applicant. We've discussed a lot already, but we're going to focus ours on the comments that we have in the packet. Okay, so where do we start here? The board reviewed the application on May 19th and July 7th, and most recently August 4th. During those hearings, the applicant provided testimony on the applicable review criteria and received board feedback with the intent of providing a consolidated response following this initial review. On September 1st, 2020, the applicant submitted formal responses to the board feedback. The memo revisits the topics identified on May 19th, July 7th, and August 4th, and provides an update to the status of topics. Staff has omitted from these staff comments topics where the board feedback was minimal or omitted. You can find these responses in the packet. I believe there were 60 different responses. We're going to focus on just a handful of them tonight that deal with some issues that are still not resolved. So the first comment, staff comment number 1, in the applicant's cover memo dated September 1st, 2020, the applicant has taken the approach of, in 13 of 18 responses to staff comments, that if the request of the board is not spelled out in the regulations, there's no basis for review or requirement to comply. And then sometimes they have accommodated the request notwithstanding. As a project having received master plan approval and applying for a plan unit development, there are several reasons why the applicant must accommodate the request of the board as quasi-judicial body. So this is where the point where we say, this is a PUD, and there are certain standards that are that have to be met, but a PUD is part of the negotiation, where we see these standards, and the staff has a viewpoint, the applicant has a viewpoint, and each board member has a viewpoint, and this is where we all come together and come up with a better project and one that's viable. So I'm hoping we get there tonight. But let's talk about some of these specifics. I'm not sure how the best way to go through it. We don't want to go through all 80 comments, but we do want to focus on 13 or more that are or need to be resolved.
Yeah, Matt, this is Evan. Do you mind if I just say one comment quickly?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Evan.
So perhaps our responses were a little bit overstated. We do not challenge the DRB's authority to weigh in with conditions based on variance requests in a PUD situation. I think our concern, which we've been pretty consistent on for the past 4 or 5 years, is that really the success or even the viability of this project relies on a couple kind of integral assumptions, and height is probably the biggest because of the required density, which was exacerbated by the inclusionary zoning requirement. So it feels to us, or feels to me, it feels to us as though the DRB has been pretty consistent in your support of the height. And so it was really just a restatement that, we feel like the height issue and a couple other issues are sort of being used over and over again to kind of maybe as leverage, but it was not to say that that either the DRB or staff do not have the ability to weigh in with conditions or requests. So I just want to kind of diffuse any tension that may have arisen from that tone. So I'll leave that there.
I appreciate that, Evan. It's good to step back on this project and the property and think about what is happening here in terms of not only are we dealing with developing a very large 6 residential units, but we're also talking about inclusionary zoning, and this is the first real test case to see if this works, and I hope it does. I think it's a good law, and I'm hoping that the applicant designs it right. I'm hoping that the staff and us have reviewed a very complex, a very large project, a very detailed project, so that we create something that we're proud of and is viable, quite frankly. And I think we're close, but there's still some outstanding issues. So without reading the entire, perhaps I can go right to perhaps one of the things I did reading this packet was think about the importance of the affordable housing in this development, and about how key our decision will be on preliminary plat, whether this goes forward to final plat, on the decision on to have CHT run one of the buildings, and how that's integrated and whether it complies with the new affordable housing ordinance and South Burlington's LDRs. And Amy from CHT is here, and maybe she could provide some testimony at this time about the project as she sees it. And we can sort of answer some questions and have Evan jump in where appropriate. Amy, is that all right with you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about this project and your management of the one building that you're going to provide as permanently affordable.
Sure. So, there's sort of two ways to go about providing inclusionary zoning. The inclusionary zoning requirement requires that apartments be rented as affordable to 80% of median income, rented as affordable to, and the occupants must be below 80% of median income. If you integrate that throughout the whole, through all of the buildings, that's who will be served. It'll be people who are basically maybe between 75 and 80% of median income, which is wonderful. But that's sort of the band you're going to get in terms of an affordable income. By having our involvement and having us develop just one of the buildings, we're able to bring other subsidy to the project. We're able to take the reduced price from the developer, but then bring other affordable housing sources and subsidy to the project so that we're able to actually serve people basically from homelessness up to 100% of median income. And most of the people who live there will actually be below 60% of median income. So it's really expanding who can be served in this neighborhood and who's really going to be living in this wonderful new neighborhood that is in a fantastic location. It's making sure that this is accessible to people with a much broader range of incomes. So we're excited to be a part of it for that reason, because we're going to be able to bring that accessibility to that whole broad range of people with different incomes.
And is it Amy? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, it's Amy
Amy
Demetriowicz.
on-
Yes,
On the board. So this would
Yeah,
be
fine.
lot 12, right?
right.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That's right. And Evan, if you could follow up, what are the final numbers on the units in the affordable in lot 12?
I believe there's 49 units of inclusionary zoning. Andrew, if you want to weigh in, feel free. And part of that is influenced by the unit mix that CHT has proposed, which is they really focus on larger units, more bedrooms to cater more towards family style units, whereas the units in the market rate really are aligned with our market study, which is, you know, young professionals, seniors, smaller units, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. We don't go larger than a 2-bedroom based on what our market analysis is telling us. And so there is sort of an underserved population that CHT, again, to Amy's point, they have subsidies and other funding sources that they can tap into that we can't, that they can serve there.
Evan, thank you. I forgot to mention that's the other way that we do provide additional accessibility. If you look at our building over at in City Center, Garden Apartments, we have I think we have 12 in total, 3 and 4 bedroom apartments, so that we are able to we're able to house larger families, which again, the inclusionary zoning ordinance doesn't require larger units. You have to meet the mix of apartment sizes that you are proposing as a developer. But by having our involvement in this project, we will be including 3 and 4 bedroom apartments as well.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you, Andrew.
I was just gonna say, we had provided updated floor plans for the building that do show the mix of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom apartments in that building as well. And it was, Evan was right, it was 49. There were 51 apartments total in the building, and 49 of them would be inclusionary. 2 of them would be market rate in the current sort of iteration.
Are you saying, Andrew, that that's a solid number at this point? It just read like it was kind of up in the air to me.
Yeah, things moved around a little bit. And, you know, I think there's potential that they might still move around a little bit, you know, primarily because we were trying to accommodate additional common spaces, larger common areas, and some of the other requests from the board. I think they're pretty solid at this point, but you know, there's always a chance, you know, until this thing gets finalized for a little bit of, but I wouldn't see any large, you know, more than, you know, a handful of apartments up or down. Yeah, I wouldn't see anything bigger than that coming.
But we'll have a final number at final plat. I think that's kind of what we're getting to, Andrew and Evan.
Absolutely.
Is that when we approve it, if it is approved at final plat, we have a number that you have to stick to. You're not going to come back and say, we're going to reduce the number of affordable units. That's the number that you're banking on, or we're banking on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's correct.
All right. And then now the board can have this discuss, we can hold the deliberative session or we could discuss it here, but you know, there was conversations in different, I don't know if there's different views, but open for debate about the idea of having all of the affordable units in one building. And at this density, this project, I understood the sentiment. I understand the how it's written in the inclusionary housing ordinance for affordable housing. In my opinion, but I'm not a lawyer, it seems like this is the acceptable way to comply with the affordable housing ordinance in order to provide affordable units in South Burlington. But if the majority on the board felt differently, you know, this is, I would assume, but I shouldn't assume, that this is the game changer for this project, that this wouldn't be possible. But I don't know. But Evan, maybe Andrew, you could fill in the blanks there. How do you build this any other way and comply with the inclusionary housing ordinance?
So my understanding, this is Dawn.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Go ahead, Dawn.
The FDRs of the regulations is that is possible, and that CHT has said that it is the most is the best proposal for providing really affordable housing for that population. And then if they split the units up among many properties, that will be more costly and problematic. So that's my understanding.
I could comment on that. The alternative really would be, it would not involve CHT. There isn't a way for us to manage or own units spread throughout the development. The financing of that would really be pretty much impossible. So the only way for that to happen would be for the developer to manage and assure compliance on those inclusionary zoning units that they would spread throughout their other buildings. If they are going to manage and do the compliance on those, they're really just going to serve those folks who technically meet the wording of the inclusionary zoning ordinance. They're going to be people at 80% of median income. That's where the rents are going to be, and those are going to be the higher income of the affordable range. So by having our participation in one building, that's where we're going to get that broader range of family sizes and of incomes. Is that clear?
So we could
sort of
Amy, can I clarify? So by doing it this way, you can serve a population, a lower income population, families that are have more modest means. Okay.
Correct.
And this is Evan again. I mean, you know, part of this language was influenced by the fact that we participated pretty heavily in the Affordable Housing Committee's drafting of this language, and really it was a back and forth with the Affordable Housing Committee and us and a number of other private developers, as well as nonprofit developers like Amy and CHT contributing and saying, you know, let's not let the perfect get in the way of what's possible here, because these large projects have pretty complicated financing mechanisms. And to Amy's point, it would be impossible for us to condominiumize units within our building and get financing. And if we were to have to do this ourselves in the market rate building, there's no way to get financing if we weren't doing it at the bare minimum of that 80% AMI. And I don't even know that financing would allow for that. So again, you know, we're trying to get, I think, the intent and spirit of the inclusionary zoning requirement done. And I think that the other piece of that language of that regulation is that it is integrated into the overall project. And I think it would be hard for anybody to make the argument that this building, in the prominence of its location, is not fully integrated into our project. It's on the most prominent corner. It's directly across the street from the two market rate units. So, you know, it is fully front and center into this project. It's not tucked away in a corner, kind of offset.
Okay, thank you for that. Does any board have any comments on how the affordable housing is structured within one building rather than integrated through all 6.
Yeah, Matt, I'll offer a comment. Obviously the new zoning, the inclusionary zoning is a change and a departure from the way South Burlington has sort of requested or required it to be done in the past. In the past, obviously, it's been spread out evenly amongst, the whole development. The new inclusionary zoning does say it can all occur in one building. And so, obviously that's the zoning regs, and this is one way of solving it. So I don't have an issue with it, now that it's within the confines of the current zoning regs.
Thank you, Mark.
Matt,
Anyone else?
Matt, I've got a quick, John, it's John.
Go ahead.
There was a concern about sharing the pool that I don't think we've talked about yet, have we?
No, that was the
Pool's
meeting, the
gone.
previous meeting. I think you missed it, John. That pool went away.
Pool is gone.
The pool's gone. We got rid of the pool. We 86 the pool.
Very good.
Or I didn't 86
Thank
it.
you very-
Someone else 86 the
thank-
pool.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
the final decision, John, just so you're aware, was to have commensurate amenities amongst all of the buildings as opposed to trying to consolidate them in one. It wasn't possible to have a pool the scale of what was necessary, so. And for access issues.
But I will say, thanks to Brian, we all learned a lot.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
I'm looking at this
the,
top notes. It looks like I missed numbering 1 on the top of page 6. I apologize for that. But it speaks to, I think, Mark's pet issue regarding timing of construction of the inclusionary units. I want to make sure.
I didn't skip that yet. I haven't gotten to it yet.
All right.
I don't think. The bedroom average, that was one I flagged. Is that an issue in terms of calculating you're not just the number of units, but to make sure that all of the affordable units aren't studios? I think you've addressed that already and said they aren't going to be. That they'll be similar to the market rate units in terms of the number of bedrooms.
I think they will
The
be
comment on
definitely
5.
more. They'll be
We're
higher.
actually increasing the unit, the bedroom counts on the inclusionary.
Right.
Yeah, I had
So that won't be.
there was
Go ahead.
the way that the comment was worded, there was just one part that was a little bit confusing. I just want to make sure we're not misunderstanding anything, but it had said the mean number of bedrooms, and then I think the staff comment said should require a proposal the number of bedrooms at final plat wish to consider setting a maximum variation in the number of bedrooms as a condition of final plat approval.
Right. So if you say we want to come in with, 40 units are going to have 2 bedrooms, and then 9 units are going to have 3 bedrooms. The suggestion was, at final plat, the board may say, you know what? You can change those numbers up to 2 each, just so you don't have to come back for an amendment if you find that your market drives something in a slightly different mix.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, I guess I just wanted to make sure that that wouldn't impede, what we wouldn't want to do would somehow impede CHT from building the 3 and 4 bedroom units because our average is lower. So just the mean thing was because they might be different on the high side. So as long as that, gets worded so that they can build the 3 and 4 unit.
Yeah, so I guess you just want to at final plat propose, this is what we're planning. We think there might be some flexibility, and remind us that this is our suggestion when we get to that point, but say what you think the maximum variation is, just so that you don't have, because we don't need to see you for every little thing as much as we love to see your smiling faces.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously what we're trying to do is not make all the affordable units studio apartments and then all the market rate units, 3 bedrooms, and that's not what's happening here. So
Yeah, I think we're actually like in a different direction where we have more of the larger units. So I just wanted to make sure there was nothing funky in the wording there that would prohibit that. Sounds like no. So
yeah. Okay, the phasing thing, which Marla brought up, which is important, and Amy may want to comment on this, which is you got 6 buildings. we certainly are fine with you building the affordable units first, but probably not going to happen. We don't want it to be built last. The question is does it happen? Is the CHT building the fourth building that goes up, or the fifth building, or the third building? And I think the way we left it at the last one was it's got to be at least the fifth, it can't be the sixth. And there's a proposal from staff saying, why not the fourth, third or fourth? I understand there's financing issues on the CHT building. I don't know if Amy or Evan could expand upon that, but what's your idea on phasing, which buildings get built when?
Amy, do you want to maybe take the lead on talking a little bit about your financing and timing of it?
Sure. So unfortunately, affordable housing resources are quite limited and also very competitive in the state. We basically expect and hope to get one major new construction affordable rental housing project funded annually. So that's one project of about, between 30 and 50 units annually in Chittenden County. We have a pipeline. So we have a project lined up to go in for funding for 2021. We have one lined up for 2022. This is the one that we would put in for 2023. So I don't know exactly where that will line up with the build out for the developer. I think that puts us in range of what you have proposed. But the other thing that needs to be clear is that there's a lot of conditions. It's a competitive process. Any one of the projects ahead of this in the pipeline may not get funded, and we'd need to come in the following year. So I can say that we are committed to getting this project funded. That's our intention, is to go in for 2023. So we'd be able to begin construction probably in the late summer, early fall of 2023. But I cannot make any kind of guarantee on that.
Yeah, and so just to shed a little bit of light on that from the developer's perspective, our intent, assuming no major hiccups along the way, is that we would be breaking ground in spring of 2022. And as we stated in the application, the intent is to build these two buildings concurrently. They would be phased somewhat, so there's one starts and then the second one starts midway through that. So there's kind of a phased lease up process. But the suggestion of the request that we do this at 50% doesn't really work, because 221 units represents more than 50% of the available units. So what we would like to request is that we push that back. We're not suggesting that it be the sixth building. We understand that the board requires more immediacy to it than that. We're just asking for a little leeway because there are financing concerns at play. And we would also ask that, whatever direction the board ends up in, that a market rate unit, whichever one, whether it's the fourth or the fifth or the sixth building, the market rates, be able to pull the zoning permit concurrently with the pulling of the or the issuance of the inclusionary housing permit, so that both of them could be constructed concurrent.
Yeah, just to
So-
clarify,
so-
because Evan was so our first phase would be lot 13 and 15. So if you're looking at the plan, it's the two larger buildings that are in the sort of upper right quadrant of the project. And so that is the planned first phase of construction, starting in 2022 and likely taking 2 years to complete. So the project would be completed in 2024.
13 and 15.
Yes. So in the plan they were looking at here, it doesn't have buildings on it, but it's the two lots in the furthest right quadrant of that little four-way intersection. Yeah, those two lots. And so those two buildings represent about 56% of the units, the market rate units. And so, we're very close to the 50% suggestion from staff, but that first phase is sort of where we were planning on being. And like I said, Evan said, we would plan to start in spring of 2022, and it's about a 2-year construction process. which would bring them online in 2024. And as Amy said, they're hoping they would be breaking ground in 2023. And so we don't really see any major concern with the timing working out, provided that that initial phase is able to start.
And just to, again, kind of reiterate the caveat that Amy said, we would like a little bit of flexibility there because they are dependent upon those financing cycles. So we would ask that it not be too rigid.
Well, so understanding that, I guess I don't understand what is more rigid. One based on total units, like once you're over this, or just talking about the building. I mean, it's simple math when you think about the building. At least that's how I think about it. Simply.
Yeah, I think buildings is fine.
So we're talking about the fourth or the fifth, the CHT building being, I assume, the requirement. And how does that, if we landed on that decision, what is the rigidity that you're worried about, Evan?
Obviously from our perspective, would prefer it to be the fifth just to give CHT a little bit more flexibility. I don't think that's any surprise that we would like a little bit more leeway in case they don't get their financing in a given cycle. The full intent is that, all these lots are built upon. So, we fully intend to fulfill this requirement. It's incumbent upon us to do it. So just giving us the flexibility isn't going to impede them from continuing. It's their mission to deliver this style of housing.
But I guess what I'm getting at, the permits don't have to be pulled in pairs, of course, but from a construction perspective, are you saying you do 13 and 15, and then you do the next two in a way that maximizes the efficiency? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what we were saying is that, whichever building the board determines is the one, whether it's the fourth or the fifth building, that either the fifth or the sixth building, if those are the market rate ones that are remaining, that we could pull that zoning permit concurrent with the pulling of the CHT building. So, we aren't delayed on the deliverance of that last building. But we also understand that that's the leverage that the city holds over us to deliver on those inclusionary units.
Yeah.
So the LDRs do
Alright.
specifically allow for, this is the section we're looking at, right? The Development Review Board may attach conditions to assure compliance with this section and may, based on documentation from a financial institution denying financial or physical site constraints, approve a plan allowing non-concurrent construction. So basically, the LDRs say that, the board should approve a construction timeline. And if the applicant needs to amend it, the board should grant that amendment.
So in other words, if we required it to be the CHT building to be the fourth building, no later than the fourth building,
Right, and then
Amy
falls out of the market.
presented documentation that said the financing is not working right now, or then we can amend it and say, okay, it has to be the fifth building. Is that what you're saying,
Right.
Marla?
Yes.
Does that provide
But in
some
terms of the concurrent permits, I would encourage, if the board's going to consider allowing concurrent permits, I would definitely say no later than fourth, because otherwise you're looking at it being built last, potentially, and then village again.
So the first two units are 15 and 13. And then what in the sequence? What is the next one?
It's a good question, and I don't think that we, in terms of our best planning, the next one is 12, which is the inclusionary. And then, the next phase of market apartments, in all likelihood, probably 10 and 11.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
However, that could change it. And I think the point that we were making was that in a more restrictive, if you were saying third or fourth for the inclusionary, that we would hope that concurrent permit provision could get put in.
It's less of an issue if you are comfortable with giving us the flexibility for it to be the fifth building.
Or if you say no later than fourth, yet if you have that caveat that says if the financing doesn't work out for CHT, that it can be amended. And that's the decision that the board has to make.
Yeah, and in any event, I think our point is if CHT was building their building fourth, that we would just hope that we could build our fifth and sixth building simultaneous with them building, and not have to get their certificate of occupancy prior to our permit being issued. That's the sort of little nitty gritty thing that we're hoping to. Just so that when at any point, once they pull their zoning permit and they're under construction, we're free to start pulling our zoning permit on the remaining market rate units.
Yeah, I don't think that the LDRs really intend to allow you to get your CO for everything but the affordable. You know, I think the intent is that the affordable aren't getting their CO last.
And that I think is a separate, and we would be fine with that requirement, right? So for instance, if the zoning permit for the affordable were pulled, we would be allowed to start our construction on the market rate, but prior to issuance of a CO for the market rate, we could require the CO for the affordable.
Got it. Board, Mark, what's your sense?
I'm okay with that. I mean, there's always ways to finagle, you know, COs and permits and timing. You know, I think obviously the intent here is to, you know, not have the affordable housing, you know, be languishing while the market rates are being cranked out. That said, I understand the complexity of financing it and, you know, having to have CHT partner up with them. And we don't want to hold up market rate if, you know, CHT and, you know, isn't ready to proceed with it. So, I mean, but, you know, I think that, you know, condition of approval that it has to be, you know, like fourth, being pulled forth, and, you know, maybe it has to, you have to get the CO for the affordable before the building permit for the sixth is issued. That way you are at least, you know, you found some compromise there and some flexibility in it.
We don't have a half-built CHT building. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
I know.
I have no problem with it being fifth as long as the CO is pulled, as long as the CO for the affordable is finished before, or is pulled before the CO for the sixth is received. I mean, you're talking about these buildings are, you know, $10 million buildings, $5 million buildings, and $10 million buildings. If they're under construction, there's huge at risk. So holding that CO is plenty of strength. I don't have any problem with it being fifth. I mean, I'd rather it was second, but you know, it's gonna land where it's gonna land.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
I tend to agree with John.
So,
with Jim.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Okay, moving on to planned unit development standards. On page 6, it was previously noted the project is proposed to generate 146 fewer trips than were estimated in the 2016 traffic impact study, from 315 trips to 169 trips, and the intersection widening and signalization were developed to support the higher trip count. The applicant testified that they would review whether widening continued to be appropriate at final plat. Staff recommends the board discuss whether they'd like to see this information prior to the conclusion of preliminary plat. Why the fewer trip count? Did we discuss this and I just forgotten it?
Yeah, so the original proposal had included, in lieu of a sixth apartment building, it had included a commercial building. And so part of the implementation of the project to fit the inclusionary housing requirement was that the commercial building that was planned on lot 14 changed to a residential building. And so the 40,000 square feet of office space and the subsequent trips, it might have even been permitted as medical office. All of those trips sort of went away, which resulted in a reduction. We have looked at this. Did the comment say if it was appropriate for final plat? So we did preliminarily look at this. We had the traffic consultant, Roger Dickinson, take a look. And I don't have a, a finalized analysis, but his indication was that the traffic light would still be warranted, but it likely wouldn't be warranted until the 6th building was constructed. And so the widening of Kennedy Drive, it's actually not widening. It's actually, the road is wide enough. It's a restriping to include an additional lane. That is warranted immediately in order to ensure safe access to the project, but the traffic light would be able to be delayed until the 5th building was complete and the 6th building was being started, was his initial look. So I guess, we would probably be okay sort of deferring that conversation to final plat and working with the city to sort of, and staff to figure out, what makes sense for a proposal here. If that's workable, but, we can delay the light, we can put it in initially as planned. I think get more information.
Yeah, there's a handful of items that on such a large project is not unexpected, but that we could throw in that category of not figure out the details until final plat. But that, certainly puts more pressure on you, the developer, to get it all together at that last stage of review. Does the board want to see any of this information before we close preliminary plat? Or are you fine, because the applicant seems comfortable with waiting until final plat?
Fine here.
Okay, so if you're
I'm fine.
comfortable,
Yeah.
we seem comfortable. Okay, moving on to page 7, comment 7. Oh, no, I forgot landscaping. Applicant provide revised landscaping exhibits showing the proposed open space for each lot. Staff recommends the board review these exhibits. Is this new as of the last hearing?
Which one are you, where are you reading?
I'm on page 7, top of page 7. It's not a staff comment, a numbered comment. The applicant provided revised landscaping exhibits showing the proposed open space for each lot. Staff recommends the board review these exhibits.
Right. This
We
is
already
something
did that at the last hearing.
This is something that the applicant had sort of shown, like, super fast at the last hearings as part of their presentation slides. So we just wanted to call your attention to the fact that those are in the packet. Make sure you didn't have any additional questions, but we didn't identify any particular issues.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that clarification, Marla. At the July 21st hearing, the board asked the applicant to provide detailed information on this talking about connectivity. This is a big one. My more detailed information on the design of the roadway. The applicant has not provided any supplemental civil or roadway drawings. Upon closer examination of the provided plans, it appears the bike lane is proposed on the uphill side of Two Brothers Drive. The comment being, pursuant to the comment above regarding the evolution of the design, staff recommends the board discuss whether to require the applicant to replace the proposed bike lane with a recreation path or urban equivalent. See next red item below. On this segment of roadway, staff recommends the board take into consideration the applicant's concurrent but separate proposal for development of 415 residential units and 1,285,000 square foot commercial space on either side of Old Farm Road and making the determination. Can we see Delilah, can we see a map so I can reorient myself on this roadway bike lane / recreation path / urban road, urban sidewalk?
What's the best plan for that, Andrew?
Well, it wouldn't be, I'm not sure if I resubmitted it as part of this packet. It would have probably been in the original. You know what? That colorful one has the roadways and units on it, I believe.
This one?
Yeah. It's a little bit harder to see, but it shows the road. Otherwise, it would be in the original packet.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't access the shared drive tonight for some reason.
Also, if you zoom in on this, you can see the road and stuff is shown.
So maybe just to provide a little bit of background information on this, I think we do have a little bit of a difference of opinion, maybe with staff in terms of, what was permitted in the initial master plan as it relates to this road. We strongly believe that this road was permitted in its existing design, and there's a lot of feedback back and forth with us, Department of Public Works, as well as VTrans on it, and it was included as part of the master plan permit. But it was also dedicated to the city and accepted by the city as part of that permit in its configuration as it exists. With that said, we're not digging in our heels and saying that the bike lane as it was designed as permitted, or as we believe it to be permitted, is 100% the way it should be. The reason why that bike lane was designed the way it was because we met with the Bike and Ped Committee multiple times, and they specifically requested that the bike lane be in this configuration. So we designed it to meet their requests. Fast forward 3.5 years, and there's a slightly new configuration of the Bike and Ped Committee. Apparently there's a difference of opinion as to what the previous recommendation was. We're not pushing back and saying we can't have it that way. The challenge is with the configuration of having to have green belts plus a community rec path plus a sidewalk. There's just not room there. It would require a redesign of the entire site to fit that. So if the recommendation is to add a community rec path as opposed to this bike lane that's in the road, we're not necessarily pushing back on that. We would like to kind of weigh in on the design of it and the materials for it. Because from an aesthetic standpoint, again, I think we've all discussed this. This is more of an urban design than a suburban design. And so concrete may be a better use than asphalt. That said, we're open and we're not inflexible on this design. It's just there's certain assumptions that we've baked into this that would radically change the design of the whole site.
Can someone grab the pen? I'm sorry. Thank you for that, Evan. Can someone grab the pen and help show me where the
In a
bike
moment,
path
we're
is?
going to switch out plans. Marla, can I give you do you have
You
the
got it. Yep. How's that? So this is the older one. Let's see. I'm not used to presenting, so I'm going to do the spotlight thing. So this, do I need to click or can you see it?
I can
see the red dot.
So there's a bike lane
Lane
here.
in the roadway.
Right, in the roadway.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so this and the next step comment are sort of the same idea where, okay, maybe this isn't the right place given the applicant's comments about urban design. But there is this desire for the rec path that is through here to allow connection for the folks who live down in the stretch of Kennedy Drive. Sorry, I'm really terrible at this presentation stuff. For the folks who live sort of off the page over here, to be able to connect from this rec path down to Brothers into this neighborhood and the folks across the street in those condo developments, rather than having to go down to Eldridge, because there will be the signal here. And that, I think, was what Kathy Frank provided on.
Can I understand this to just tag off what Evan said? We've got sidewalk, rec path, bike lane. And what you're saying is we can't have, putting all three would be a redesign. Is that right, Evan?
Well, putting all three would be redesigned, but I don't think I think the request is to go from a bike lane correct me if I'm wrong, Marla, but the request is to go from a bike lane in the road to a rec path off of the road. But the challenge would be that if you have a sidewalk, a rec path, and then you have the green belt requirement off of the curb, you create this dimension that just doesn't work.
Yeah, so it would be, instead of a sidewalk and a rec path, it would be the sidewalk and the lane would be replaced by a rec path. So A rec path, I think, is 10 feet wide, a sidewalk probably 5 or 6. The bike lane is probably 5 or 6. I think it might be the same total width. But pursuant to your other comments, I think that staff has sort of come around to the idea of there is some discussion to be had about this being an urban setting. And so what do you propose to be better suited to the urban setting? Maybe the rec path isn't the right solution. What is the right solution? And get someone who is a streetscape expert to take a real hard look at this and present what you think is the best solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this, and there are a few things that sort of, and I think your proposal was to look at it at final plat, and I think that would probably be the best point in time to look at it. I think there's some relationship between that design and the design of the the landscaping and the things at the corners. I think that sort of coordinating all those materials and looking at the entire thing holistically is probably necessary. The landscaping plan's not done yet. It's supposed to be part of the final plat, so I think that sort of coordinating all of that is important. So if you're looking at the sheet here, there's essentially 8 sides of the road. And each of those 8 sides, so, there's at the 4-way intersection, it spurs off, right? In roads, and each road has 2 sides. So I guess that's 16 sides. Each of those has a unique condition. So I don't think any one of them is the same. So, different things fit in different places. Different things cause problems in different places. So sort of looking at the entirety of it, there's no one thing that works universally. And so, to the idea of engaging with somebody to help sort of look at this and to design it in coordination with the landscaping, I think makes a lot of sense. And so, I think we're sort of open to that, with the caveat that we would hope that the decision, does its best to preserve our existing permits to construct the road, because the neighborhood is under construction currently, and the road is part of that. But other than that, we're certainly open to that process, and I think it would yield a good result. Because our concern really is, if you pull the bike lane out of the road and put a 10-foot asphalt rec path up that hillside, the character of it just isn't going to fit with what we're trying to achieve. And so, how do you change that, and what does that look like? I don't know that we have the answer right now, but I do think it's an important question.
Marla, I see that Kathy Frank with the Bike and Ped Committee is attending the meeting. I don't know if she's still with us, but I'd be welcome her comments or anyone else from Bike and Ped Committee, either now or in the chat box or in an email. Kathy, are you there?
I am there and I'm awake. I think taking a look at the bigger picture, stepping back and taking a look at the bigger picture as we now see it is a good idea. I mean, the bigger goal is to allow pedestrians and cyclists to get over to the other side of Kennedy Drive and there's a crossing there, or to get from that side over here and onto Kimball Avenue. I think it's been 3 years since the committee's looked at it, so we would be happy to participate in the discussion of whether there's a better way to do it. If we can get permission to meet, we're one of those committees that doesn't have a staff person working full time, so we can only call the committee if it's important, an emergency.
Okay.
It would be
Thank
happy
you for that, Kathy.
Bike and Ped Committee again.
Pardon?
We would be happy to meet with the Bike and Ped Committee again on this issue.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of having you re-engineer the road, and I am in favor of you coming up with an idea that that Kathy and the other people that spend a lot of time thinking about connectivity, think is the best plan going forward, and having someone that understands streetscapes better than I do looking at it. So, you know, this doesn't have to be a decision made tonight or even at the end of preliminary plat, but understanding that I'm not going to be in favor of you re-engineering the road, but I am in favor of figuring out a solution to this. I don't know if the board feels that they need an answer before preliminary plat is closed, but Don, what do you think? You live nearby. What would you say about connectivity here?
You know, I want to take my leads from other people who, you know, I'm not sure I understand the difference between bike path, pedestrian path, rec path. You know, I'm a walker, so I will take my lead from others. I love the connectivity in South Burlington that this has the potential of providing, but beyond that, I'm not a technocrat.
Okay, thank you, Don.
Yeah, Mark
Yeah, I
here.
think
Uh,
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say that, you know, I think we do need a big picture address to it here. I don't feel we need it now. I think we can see it at the next stage, especially once we get the landscaping done, because that's going to be a big integral part of it. And I think, you know, that with, you know, another review by Rec Path and Bike and Ped would be, you know, I'd be satisfied with whatever they come up with, because yeah, I would defer to them on this.
And I would
I
agree
don't know
with
if Kathy's, go ahead, sorry. I don't know if Kathy's still on the line, but it seems like that's doable, right? That that whatever plan comes, that I know Kathy goes to a lot of our meetings, but that could be shared amongst her group without, I don't know the bylaws for the Bike and Ped committee, but that she could get some feedback from her fellow members in some way. I hope that's possible.
I'm still here. I'm pretty sure we can arrange to have a meeting somehow.
Yeah, just, I mean, circling back, I do think that we can come up with a good proposal for this. You know, the idea of removing the bike lane from the road allows for the space to create that wider connection off of the road. And so knowing that that's on the table is really important to looking at that. You know, we've identified a consultant group who could potentially help with this. We've got a great landscape team on board. We've got you know, our civil engineer, and we'll coordinate with the Department of Public Works, and we can coordinate with the Bike and Ped committee as well, and sort of pull something together. I mean, this particular scenario, I think, is solvable. I think we just need to get into the details of it and get you guys something that looks good and that works for everybody.
And it's something you feel comfortable doing during the final plat review?
It's something that we'll be doing leading up to that. Yeah, and we'll submit the materials at final plat, you know, with the initial submission proposing, for sure.
Okay, so that takes care of comment number 8. Appreciate that. Moving on to comment number 9. Really? Did I just go from 8 to 9? Yeah. Sorry.
You're good.
8 to 9. Regarding snow storages, many snow storage areas are in areas also considered for usable open spaces. Staff recommends the board provide preliminary feedback on whether they consider that snow storage can be coincident with usable open spaces. This comment was previously provided on 7/21, but time did not allow to be addressed. Snow storage. Where is your snow storage? Can you show us on the map, on the plan?
Yeah, so it would again be on so this is just the supplemental. So the snow storage shown in the original submission plans. So I don't know if you have those available.
Yeah, I can probably do that. This is the advantage of working from home if you save stuff to your local from time to time. Let me find a good example. Okay, so here's a decent example. No, that's a terrible example. I lied. I think this is my favorite example. All right, so share screen.
We can see.
Hang on. Hold your horses. All right. So I think this was my favorite guy here, where you had, this is lot 12. And you kind of have your snow storage up in here. These two spaces are not allowed, so you're going to be removing them. So this whole big thing will be snow storage. And the question is, can this also be considered community space? I mean, does it existing as snow storage preclude it from being community space, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's sort of a question that's like more general than specific, right? Is that should it be considered? And I mean, I think our perspective is we have a really limited amount of space on the site. Snow is obviously a very important consideration. We've identified what we believe to be sufficient snow storage areas. It is the case that those snow storage areas, you know, will overlap with places that we might have a picnic table or benches or things of this nature in the summertime. I think our working assumption is folks don't really want to be sitting out at a picnic table in the middle of winter. But I think we'll also be looking to provide exterior spaces that are accessible in the winter. And so I really think it's probably, you know, a balance. I think we do have opportunities, winter recreation and winter outdoor areas throughout the site. You know, but our hope is that we can consider these as snow storage and something else, because that would seem to be beneficial to everybody. And I guess, you know, looking at it in a more complete picture, the landscaping plans should help pull that together. But our feeling generally is we'll have areas for winter as well. You know, in particular, plazas on the front of the building, the barbecue and fire pit areas that we've identified. Those aren't helping as snow storage.
It's important to note too that to the immediate south of what we're looking at right now is a landscaped walking area. You know, there's landscape paths there, plantings, et cetera, that go around the stormwater area. So, you know, it's helpful to kind of understand the context of that snow storage area.
Yeah,
and there's also, you know, there's plant material that can survive piles of snow being dumped on them, and then there's plant material that won't survive that. So it's kind of getting into the more detail where, you know, ornamental grasses can be piled on, you know, rigid shrubs, not so much. So, you know, I think there's ways to kind of balance that and provide both in some of these areas, but it requires more detail.
I personally, I don't have an issue with that. You know, seeing with young kids, snow storage areas can sometimes be utilized as sliding hills.
Yeah, there's a 5-foot pitch on this one. That's looked great.
Love snow mountain, dirt mountain.
Yeah.
So that's just a different way. In the winter, it becomes a different type of amenity, is really what you're saying.
There you go.
You know, there's problems that facially seem insurmountable, and there are ones that I think we are confident that we can come to a good solution for. And I think this is one of the ones where it feels like we can, as we get into the details, we can get this dialed in to a point where it's place, it's workable, and the areas for snow storage are able to serve a dual purpose, and there's a good balance of other areas available during winter when those are occupied with snow.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like you have the blessing of the board, so.
There was, just backing up from that comment, there is one fairly substantial item prior to it that doesn't have a red comment, which was the parking on lot 13. It looks like it's at the bottom of page 8, just before we.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay. The criterion 1406B2 is specifically intended to prevent parking from being located nearer to the street than the adjoining building, which is how the board has always interpreted it. It's one of the only 3 criteria which the board does not have the ability to waive as part of the PUD. Staff considers this non-negotiable, and the applicant must remove parking located between the front line of the building and the street. The applicant may choose to modify the front line of the building so that it is nearer the street. Can we see this on the plan? These comments regarding front parking also apply to 2 spaces between the building on lot 12 and the street, and any other locations where parking breaks the front plane of the building as extended, either linearly or along a curve as applicable.
The color plan is going to be the only one submitted recently that shows the parking, the original set. This plan
So
works.
no parking in front of the building. You've got 3 spots where?
Yeah, so the area that Delilah is zoomed in on here in the lower right side of the screen is the area that is getting discussed. There's a fairly substantial amount of parking there. I think it's sort of maybe helpful to give a little bit of background on how this little corner came to be. We've talked a couple of times about how originally the master plan, which is the black line that's shown, is actually the amended master plan line. It's not the existing master plan line, which would include less of the land and the building that's shown in the plan here. And that amendment to expand the master plan to be this dark black line is with you guys currently. It's the next agenda item. We had expanded the master plan with that line to include the building and to include the garbage building, because when we sort of worked the inclusionary requirement into the plan and increased from 340 to 390 apartments, we had a challenge hitting everything. And we needed to expand a little bit, which is where that master plan expansion came in. The challenge that we faced, and sort of a conversation we had with staff a long time ago, was that if we pull all of the parking that's currently below that black line into the master plan, what it does is it takes that acre and a half of land and 18 units that are associated with it, and it ties them with the current master plan where we can't fit any more units. And so a suggestion which came from, I think it came from Marla, was that we could permit parking as a conditional use outside of the master plan. And that.
Sorry, can you say the bit about the units somehow again?
So the idea was that if this black, you can't see my cursor, but if we were to
Draw.
the black line that you guys are seeing on the screen, can I do this? Does this work?
Yeah, Andrew, you can pick up the drawing tool.
This, I just did it.
Got it.
Right.
Green.
So if we were to take that black line and move it like this and put this parking all into lot 15 and lot 13, this whole area would become part of this development. And the 18 units of density associated with this acre of land, acre and a half of land, would evaporate because we can't fit any more units over here. And so what we're looking to do is to permit this parking as a conditional use while we're simultaneously permitting this master plan so that these density units can be incorporated into the overall PUD for the remaining land so that they don't evaporate. And then in that, this parking could be deeded to lot 13, or just remain or do whatever. But it was a solution so that the density associated with it wouldn't get tied into a master plan where we can't fit anything else. And it is sort of complicated, but that's the root of it. And that's why the parking was being proposed as a conditional use rather than just incorporated into the plan. So it wasn't an attempt to sort of skirt a regulation. The question that I think is before you guys is that, you know, these spaces, if you come across this way in this area, are technically in front of the building. And while they appear to be permissible as a conditional use because there is no building on the lot where the parking is, they are in front of the building for the lot which they serve. So I don't know if that all made sense.
No, I kind of get where you're going with this. The black line is the current division, right?
How do you erase
the green line you drew is, yeah, I'm confused by all the lines here.
Can I
Yeah,
erase
sorry,
the?
Delilah stepped away for a second and only she can erase them. So
Okay.
she'll be right back.
But so the purpose of doing it this way is twofold, Andrew. So you can have parking in front of the building, essentially what it serves, and secondarily, so you don't change the density math.
It was primarily done for the density. I think that in looking at it, as Marla points out, technically the parking in front of the building could be permitted this way. That was not our intent. I mean, honestly, it being in front of the building never really crossed our mind until it got pointed out in this staff comment. And so, you know, the parking is important to the project. There's not really anywhere else to put it. It seems to work rather well here because the road is bending away. And so, you know, our hope is that we can permit it as a conditional use. Marla had mentioned in the comment we had to file an application. We can file a conditional use application and proceed with it. Alternately.
Yeah, so parking in the front is really sort of an immovable object. Now, if you apply as a conditional use, I think, you know, that may be a technical loophole. I don't know that it feels like a good solution. And the board, I think, is very astute when it comes to attempts to find loopholes. You know, we're
Well,
looking
this is actually quite a loophole. This is a pretty creative loophole.
Yeah, and most districts don't allow commercial parking. So it's only because of this zoning district, of which there are only a couple across the city, that this could even be a valid, potentially valid argument. But if it's reviewed as a conditional use, then it has to meet the conditional use criteria, which are no adverse impact on the character of the neighborhood. And I don't know that you're going to be able to say parking right up against the street has no adverse impact on the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah. How many inclusive units would this affect? How many lower moderate income units would potentially decline if you lost the use of the additional space?
Well, one of the things that the affordable or the inclusionary zoning requirement allows is a lower parking requirement, but CHT and the other affordable housing providers have been very consistent that in a location like this, where it's not, you know, in downtown Burlington, they need the same parking allocation as a market rate unit because people are driving to work, to wherever they go. So,
but these parking
absolutely
spaces serve lot 13 and 15, right? They don't serve lot 12.
Yeah,
right, but the total number of inclusionary units, if the total number of units drops, so could the total number of inclusionary units drop.
The total number of units, yeah. So that's actually for Andrew was talking about the next phase of development. If this land, and I'm pointing at my screen because that's helpful. If this land is included in the next phase of development, then there's more density available for the next phase of development. If it's included in
I'm sorry.
phase, then
I'm
they
sorry.
can't build out that density. Yeah, that was complicated.
I see. So it's not related at all. Okay.
It is related in a way. I mean, you're talking about I think I just tried counting, it's 17 to 20 parking spaces at 1.5 spaces per unit. So the inability to park, those 20 cars, that would be whatever that is, 20 divided by 1.5. Just
Yeah, about 12.
12 units. So it's, it's 12 units worth of parking there. It is a unique situation. And I think, to Marlo's point about the sort of neighborhood and whether it impacted the field, I think, that has to get looked at. And, we could provide information on that, conceptual information for the future of the neighborhood. I would point out that directly across the street in future plans is a park. So and that is one area where parking in front of is actually allowed. So maybe, because it's a park, it kind of fits in with that.
It's parking.
Certainly these things are challenging. This is a sticky wicket, I think is what they call it. And, we've, like I said, originally this idea, I'd love to take credit for it, but it did come from a conversation with staff to permit this as a conditional use. And so, it was not even, it was, a conversation we had, how do we preserve this density and pursue the parking that we need to make this inclusionary happen? This was the solution. We hope it can get permitted. It's there.
Andrew, are you saying that 12 or 13 units literally would not be able to be built without this?
It would either be in this phase or in it's really challenging to figure out how to get these parking spaces. Where do they go? You would have to put them deeper into the lot, behind the plane of lot 13, and into the area, where it's sort of saying revised area 4.3 acres. And that just sort of sprawls it. And, that could be viable, but we were just trying to keep it consolidated. So, because the future is not known. And so sort of sending a finger of parking out into the middle seemed more problematic than keeping it tight to the existing development.
Matt, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So Andrew, lot 17, what is the development plans for that?
So the current proposal subdivided into 4, it's a bit tricky to talk about because Old Farm Road is getting reoriented in that project. But it basically divides that triangle into 4 or 5 development lots. And so the next development lot would be immediately adjacent to the parking entry, where you're seeing the entrance into the parking. The plan would be to have a building location at that corner.
Right. So I guess, when I look at this, I have a hang up with those spaces that are still in the, we'll call it the orangish shaded, parcels on lot 13 directly adjacent to the building that are forward of the building. Because that's obviously clearly part of that sort of hierarchy of that building. And I guess I would be more curious to see where the building arrangement on lot 17 falls in relation to that other spit of parking that sort of goes in and then meanders around and then bends to the left. Because if you put a building that's closer to the street there, then I think you could justify that section of parking not being associated with the building on lot 13, but that section of parking that is directly adjacent to lot 13 that's forward of it, I wouldn't be supportive of it even under conditional use permit because it's clearly in violation of what our parking standards intent is.
So Andrew, I'm just curious, Andrew, if that, have you architecturally explored expanding that corner apartment, bumping it out toward the street?
It's a strange location because there's like a giant, there's a ditch there, which we're going to talk about at some future.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So it'd be a little bit difficult because of the grading to fill that in. You know, there's an opportunity maybe to put some kind of, I mean, could we put some kind of a wall in? Like, how do you guys, I mean, what is a building? Like if we put like a brick, you know, half wall around the corner of the parking lot, something like that, does that, if it's, how do you sort of view that?
Matt, do you want me to answer that or?
Yeah, go ahead.
It has to block view and it has to be a real building. It has to, so a little wall won't do it. You can see the closest thing to a see-through thing was the CVS little portico that was built a couple of years ago. But even that has view blockage in it and it's up the hill a bit. So it has to be a real building. It doesn't have to necessarily have windows, but it has to have there has to be something substantial to it.
What was the Pizza Galley solution at like 500 or so Shelburne Road?
They built a wall, a brick wall that's, gosh, it's probably 5 to 6 feet high, and it's also slightly uphill. So they were able to block view successfully with, you know, it's 5 or 6 feet of height. So that would.
Well, I think we do have that opportunity because the parking lot is 6 or 7 feet below the road. You know, so a 5-foot wall along the road would completely block the ability to see the parking lot, for whatever that's worth. Although I think we're not allowed to build a wall near the right of way, or that was a comment at the last hearing we had one.
It has to be 5 feet away. It's not that far.
Yeah, so that would be something that, you know, we could explore as well.
Okay, so what we're hearing is there's going to be some more thought put into architectural ways to solve this problem, because it is a sticky wicket, as you say.
Well, I think that Mark's suggestion is interesting, right? Because you're taking the number of spaces from 20 down to 4 or 5 that are in front of the plane of the building, and in that lower lot. You know, so I don't know if that's a viable read either, but that would be good for us to understand your sort of opinion on lining up with whether that makes sense. Seeing as it's sort of a separate aisle and it's sort of associated with a future phase. I mean, it almost certainly would be associated with the development of lot 22. You know, it would be the access point for that.
Marla, do you have a sketch plan for the balance of the plan? Because I believe that had the building footprints on that commercial corner to give a conceptual layout as to what that would look like.
No.
Is that lot 22 you're talking about, Evan?
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Maybe. What, I mean, is there any validity to that, or is that just like totally?
Well, it's a conceptual layout of what
getting it
that would look like. So yeah, I mean, but it does kind of give credence to, I think, the concept that Mark brought up. You know, how that could be incorporated into that lot, because that would be the intent.
Well, the other piece
maybe
that we had put in our response is that, you know, this subdivision creating lot 22 that you're looking at is filed at this point. We're working through some of the details to make sure that it's complete, but you know, it would be getting reviewed simultaneously with this permit. And so, you know, there would be an opportunity there if, you know, you guys are reviewing that and you could put building envelope or something in it. I mean, at least you'll have an understanding of what's coming into lot 22. sort of simultaneous with this review.
Yeah, I think I'm in the right folder and I'm not seeing anything that shows a potential building on it. I mean, this is what I've got. And there's no buildings. So I've got this one that also has no buildings.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, I don't think I've seen anything with buildings.
so is in terms of the wall or structure, it doesn't have to be, does it have to be connected to the existing, the principal building, or how does that work? Do you know what I mean? Like, does it have to come off the corner of lot 13, or is a standalone feature, whether it's a wall or?
Well, there's a history of them not being, there's CVS is a good example of not coming off the building.
Okay. So it sounds like then the conditional use review happening simultaneously to preserve the density is something that's understandable and workable, and that we should take a look at an idea to block the view of the parking lot somehow with regard to those 6 or 8 spaces that are proud of the plane of lot 13's building. Does that?
That sounds right to me. Does that sound right to everyone else on the board?
So we're talking, there's sort of a line drawn here and it's these spaces here. And then what about the spaces that are truly not associated with the lot 13 parking lot, but are part of this drive aisle thing?
Well, that's why I wanted to sort of see the building, because if the building for lot 22's footprint is sort of like tied up to the street, then those parking spaces, I would say, are more associated with that building and would not be forward of the building line.
The
But
intent
there is
here
no
is
application for lot 22 at this time. And this is where we want to be really careful about, approving a development plan. And this is the original staff suggestion here was, well, so maybe these are installed in a super temporary way. Because there's no development plan for lot 22 at this time.
Right, because the spaces that are directly adjacent to lot 13, I prefer not to see any kind of spaces, but if we do a proper screening, can't see them from the road, I guess I could be supportive of that if it supports the density, which improves the inclusionary housing, pro forma. But, that other little bit that's in yellow right now, that's clearly not associated with lot 13. And I think it would be visual, whether it is or isn't, but it's just not reading as being part of it. And I really think I need to see lot 22 or some commitment that the building on lot 22 is going to be tight to the road so that those spaces are not forward of it. Because I don't think we want to add in another big wall for those spaces as well.
So to the point of the temporary parking, because I think this is a good segue. The reason why we had said that the temporary parking wasn't going to work is because we were looking at, I'm not able to draw anymore, but we were looking at the entirety of the area that is below the red dotted line on this plan. And so, our you were talking about the parking on lot 17, which includes that lot that is directly associated with lot 13. We would not want to construct the parking that is adjacent to lot 13, located on existing lot 17 here, it doesn't have a number, on a temporary basis. I think the yellow highlighted spaces and the access road that you're looking at, that's a spot where I think the temporary thing could make sense. So maybe there's a bifurcation of that, right? Like the lower parking area that's right next to lot 13 is permanently approved as a conditional use, and this upper sort of entry ramp adjacent to this lot 22, it could be a temporary area. If that that would be fine, I think, on our part. We were concerned about having this big area of parking that no one can see me pointing to.
Do you have drawing tools back? I tried to give them to you.
Okay, yeah, here. So we were concerned about the idea of this area. It's not working now.
Do I have to, oh, Joella, do I have to have it not
There
paused?
you go, I got it. We were concerned about this area being temporary in here. And so I think if we're looking at doing something that screens or doing something to enable this parking to happen, like this area coming in and around could be temporary, I believe. That would probably work really well.
And Marla, it's the parking spaces themselves, not the circulation, right? That needs to be behind.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I'm sitting here, Andrew, I think there's ways to work this out. It might be a combination of architecture and modifying the lot a little bit, but.
Let's do that then.
Okay.
It's a lot of information. I think we can come back with something for you on this.
Okay. Is there any other, did I skip over anything to either the applicant or staff or the board? Is there anything that we just did a quick glance at that we should have done more? Is there any other questions for the applicant or questions from the applicant to the board or staff at this time?
No, I think we're good. We appreciate everybody's efforts.
Hearing
Are we
none,
talking
is-
overall in the
hold on.
comments or on that particular item? Sorry.
No, I'm talking about all the comments. Before I turn it over to public comments, I want to make sure that we've addressed everything in the packet.
Oh yeah, I would say there are still a couple sort of issues floating out there.
Okay, let's discuss them.
I don't know what page it's on, but the feedback on we just want to make sure that the access from lot 13 to the street we had presented to the board a sort of an updated elevation for lot 13. We had added an entrance along that street. The feedback in the packet just sort of, I think we just want to make sure that we don't need to do, that the board is comfortable with the amended elevation, which does not include unit accesses, primary unit accesses, but does include another main entry door. So yeah, you could.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, we're at page 10 for those who have the packet in front of them. Yeah, this is where the living space is at street level. And the staff was wanting to see if there couldn't be entrances on the first floor.
Yep, so this is the
unit.
And that's the elevation, the southeast elevation. Obviously, it's not as pretty as the renderings that we showed you at the last hearing that had landscaping and stuff sketched in by hand. But this is an updated, architectural elevation. So you can see the door that we added 2/3 of the way down the structure. And we have these, these Juliet balconies that are sort of sitting down near the ground. I guess the question, is just that, is everybody comfortable with the sort of connection to the street that we're presenting here with this updated elevation? And
tell me a little bit more about the what's changed since the last hearing regarding the entrance, the doors.
Well, so essentially the door that you're staring at, which is just to the left of where it says southeast elevation, So right here, we
Yeah.
reoriented the units and we created a community room right there in the interior, and then created a new door in the building. And so now instead of there being no doors to the street on that side, there's one main door. This particular area, I think it's easy to sort of overlook in the plans, and this is the same location where the parking lot sits, proud of the plane of the building. The grade of the site is running kind of like this. And so the road is essentially where this yellow line is. This is obviously a gross approximation, but as you're heading up the road is getting higher than the building. And so there's a drainage way that's running in between the road and the building in this area. And so our feedback, yes, there are issues in terms of rentability or marketability, but there's also sort of aesthetically, it's sort of an odd intersection to sort of be having steps down and then across into the building. And it also creates some sort of practical concerns, which are seemingly below sort of the time of everybody on this call. But, if you have a drainage way running through there and you're creating walkways across, you're also creating areas for water to dam up. And so then you're putting in catch basins. If you're putting in catch basins, then you have to maintain those and keep ice off of them in the winter, or you risk, snow melts, there's ice over the catch basin, somebody's apartment is flooding, the drainage isn't working. It's just sort of a cascade of sort of issues with blocking off too much here. And so that's sort of why we presented this one additional connection. And we felt like it really, would connect to the street well. In previous versions, showed trees and grasses and seat walls and landscaping and all the nice stuff that Jeff is going to program in there. But this is just an architectural rendering.
I think there's the other concern, which we stated a couple times, is that, having experience owning and managing larger multifamily buildings, there is a concern about control points and access. And it's just a different situation than when you have row houses or townhouses, because you are accessing larger common area space. And so one apartment can allow someone directly into their unit, which allows them directly into the rest of the building. And there is a different expectation. And we hear this regularly from our apartment owners. We have cameras, we have accessibility issues, we have code access. But then there's another point, which is the livability of the units. And if you add exterior doors directly to the street, a number of these units are small one-bedroom units. They're junior one-bedroom units. And so they're efficient uses of space. And if you add an exterior door, it really kind of constrains furniture layouts and the livability of the unit. So there's kind of a variety of reasons why we feel that it really is not accomplishing much. I get the sentiment of the staff, I think, but it's not really providing a lot of upside, and there's a lot of downsides to it.
I mean, I think if you read the staff comments, it's pretty clear that staff position is that in absence of legitimate testimony from people who are experts in security, that security issues should not be considered a major factor here. And the reason for that, just to provide some background, is, there's a lot of noise about inherent bias. And I think that we've heard that even in this application as it relates to the pool, in relationship to affordable units. I think to say that a multifamily building is somehow more subject to security concerns is an expression of inherent bias. And I'm concerned about that being part of the testimony for this project. I think it's important to consider actual design issues. And if the applicant feels like that needs to be a major basis for the board's decision, we would be happy to invite the police chief to testify in that matter.
So
Boy, Marla, I couldn't disagree with you more. These people are professional managers. They are security conscious. I've managed well, actually thousands of units in my portfolio over the years, and there is no question that multifamily has bigger security problems than a single family house or a townhouse. And so just, writing it off as some kind of bias is just bogus. And I couldn't disagree with you more.
I mean, I can reference a handful of times just in the last 6 months where we've had security issues at our multifamily properties that there have been police responses to. We've had people banned from our properties. So, it is a real concern. And I think there is a different expectation. Again, I understand, I think the design request, but to me, the design and aesthetic piece of it is sort of overcome by the fact that the aesthetics of putting in these ramps and the fact that the part of the building that would be accessed from the street is actually below grade here, it kind of discredits the aesthetic argument. So then it's just a livability. And I think that from a security standpoint, the livability of the units, I just don't see what the upside is.
No, and I have no problem with your practical considerations in terms of design. My concerns are entirely on what we're saying about, the people who live in multifamily buildings.
Well, so it seems like there are adequate design considerations, and so if that can be the focus of the finding, then that's certainly
Can I say something that's probably contrary here? I've lived in a city. I've lived in the large apartment buildings. I think the lobby is what fosters a sense of community. I think the lobby is where you meet your neighbors, and I don't view it as less than or anything. I wish I lived in a large building with a lobby. So having that access point and not having individual entrances on, whether it's from a sense of community standard or an aesthetic standard, it doesn't move me having individual entrances. You're living in a multifamily building. You're not living in a single family home. Lobby is part of the appeal to me. So
yeah, Matt, the other thing about this is it's often not the people in the building that are the concern. It's you're protecting the people in the building. You're making sure that, this is an access for 50 units or whatever. So somebody who gets in who doesn't belong in the building is a significant concern. And I just totally don't get where we're coming from. This is not a downplaying of who lives in the building. It's an access issue for security. It's no different than a hotel.
And I just offer my opinion on this. I'd come at it from the architect standpoint that, when you are designing a multifamily building, you're trying to go for consistency. And, it's a multi-story building, and when you stack these units, you tend to stack the designs, the plumbing walls, kitchens, and, you're going to have a D1, C1, B1 units, which are probably 2 of them or 3 of them above. And so the layout and the circulation of the functionality of an exterior door and an interior door into the hallway on just the ground floor units will significantly change the way, the unit is going to function and be set up. I've seen obviously plenty of condos where the first floor has got the patio that connects out to the parking lot with the cheap slider, but you're not talking about that. You're talking about actually making it a door entrance that is used for main egress ingress to those few units that are at grade. And these units are not set up that way. That's a different paradigm shift of how these units are used. The lobby is the central focal point for ingress egress. And when you're in the lobby and in the corridors, that's when you then access the quote unquote front door to the units, which is off of the hallway. Andrew brought up this door into the community room as sort of like a pedestrian connection. I was looking at it from a completely different standpoint of, you know, I want to see that door a little more gracious. It's a totally different subjective discussion than having all the units that are at grade have pedestrian connection. But I'd like to see that door, you know, maybe have a little patio outside of it or be recessed or something, because I can't even tell that there's a door there. You know, you have to zoom in to see that there's a little differentiation of columns or, you know, a set of, you know, 6-foot doors or something on it. You know, I would just offer, I'd like to see that door accentuated to indicate that there is a community room and common area behind it. But I don't see a need or would support having individual units at grade have exterior doors. That is more of a townhouse, row house style of living, not a multifamily style.
And to Mark's point on that new door that's been placed there, yes, we will definitely flesh that out and make it much more prominent.
Okay, what else is there? Anything else that we missed or want to go into in greater depth before I turn over to public comment? Hearing none, go ahead.
There was one comment, I'm sorry, I created like a thing of notes here. It's item number 2. Where is this? Proposed structure shall be related harmoniously to the site. So there was a staff comment about the applicant, in addition to concepts presented, provide elevations, demonstrate a harmonious relationship at the transition between buildings at the next stage of review, with particular attention paid to the intersection of O'Brien Farm Road and Two Brothers Drive. We're at the location where phase 1 area abuts phase 2 area. I just, could you guys or could staff just elaborate a little bit on that, just to make sure that we understand the sort of directive there? Like what
you want to share something?
Andrew, I think I see your point. Two Brothers Drive and O'Brien Farm Road is not the intersection or not the transition between the two phases. So I guess there should probably be an extra comma in there. You know, you provided some landscape drawings that the board has taken a look at and didn't have any questions about on the intersection. I guess, so what remains is, you know, where phase 1 and phase 2 kind of abut, just to make sure that that's an appropriate and not an abrupt transition.
Okay, and what are the types of things that you guys see used or like seeing used to sort of affect that, just in terms of?
Well, a good sheet would be page 49 of the plans. So you have to kind of zoom out in your mind and imagine that, you know, this parking area on the top of the page goes back a ways and then the building on lot 12 is to the right of the page. But you can kind of get a sense the things that are numbered 96 and 118 are the terminal buildings in phase 1, and then you go into phase 2, which we're talking about today. And so Andrew's question is, you know, what would be an appropriate transition?
Just, I mean, we have the landscape architect here and you guys are looking at it. I guess I'm just, you know, I want to make sure that we, you know, we sort of understand, you know, I mean, I think the concept would be to provide a significant landscape space in this area. Is that sort of in keeping with, with what you guys would be, you know, looking for? Are there other elements that sort of help, or is it just come back with a landscape plan and don't be shy? Because that's sort of probably the way we would tackle it, is to just put a lot of landscape here. trees of different types and sizes and hedges.
I mean, you're transitioning into a more urban setting through here. You know, I speak only for staff in saying this, but I think our perspective is that the landscaping should complement rather than stand alone in these areas. You know, you've got your retaining wall that you obviously are going to take another look at. You know, there can be features that are not shielding, but are rather enhancing.
Okay.
I think that's good. I think that's good input. I think that's great, Marla, for your landscape architect to absorb. I don't know what to do. I'm not
Got
a
that,
landscape
Jeff?
expert, but Jeff, if he comes back with an idea how to accommodate that, because I think Marla makes some good points, that would be helpful for me.
Yeah, Andrew, the other thought I had was if you're coming from one direction, you might want to be seeing more, you know, a wrought iron fence and a park bench and whatever. And coming from the other side, you're coming from landscaping and so the transition feels like you are transitioning the area. That would be my suggestion.
I see.
Oh, I think the kind of common path through here, and the kind of distance from the last row house to the first multifamily building, you know, it all kind of works together to make that transition. I mean, if we had number 96, you know, right up against lot 10, you know, abruptly, but I feel like this open space through here is kind of the buffer, the break, and even the entry drive into the underground parking. I mean, I think it all kind of works to provide a break and a transition between the two kind of archetypes.
Yeah, I really like the idea of if different approaches sort of show a different character. It's a cool idea. Well, we can work through that. So that was just sort of a clarification. I think we've hit on everything that I had notes about.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public related to this project? If so, either put your name in the chat box or say your name.
I think we've lost everyone who's not part of the applicant team.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like it. I'm looking at the 14 people on board. Okay, so where do we go?
Well done, guys.
So where do we go from here?
So our original suggestion was to kind of sleep on it. Given how it went tonight, I kind of feel differently, except that Brian wasn't here. And I wonder if you should still sleep on it. Give Brian a chance to review the video and the plans and the minutes, and then continue it just in case. And meanwhile, I can start writing a decision.
And was there a concern for the working through the parking on lot 13? Or, I mean, I think we would be comfortable dealing with that at the next stage of review, but that's a question for you guys. If we need to present something, we'll get it turned around quickly.
It sounds like you have a game plan to me. It sounds like you're going to provide an architectural element to the satisfaction of the board for the lot that's contiguous with the parking for lot 13, and you're going to design the parking that is not contiguous in a manner such that it does not encumber that lot for future development.
So it's a temporary style.
Right. Does that sound, everyone nodding? No one's shaking their head no.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like what we talked about.
Okay. I can do that.
But if we continue, what issues would be discussed at the continued hearing? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I
whether or
think
not we can
that,
close this, other than
Brian obviously
Brian.
shared a lot about affordable housing.
Yeah.
You know, any of these issues, this is 6 projects rolled into one application. You know,
Yeah.
giving me a little bit of time to write it and then say, hey, wait a minute, I don't know where we landed on this. Might not be the worst idea. But
Oh,
it is,
I see your point, Marla. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
it is preliminary. We can
Okay.
always say to be decided at final. It's up to you guys. You can go either way.
Is it
Anyone?
possible to
Sounds
reopen a
off on
hearing, or is that more complicated?
Yeah, that requires rewarning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not great.
But it also gives you time to think about how you want to do the parking lot screening. If you have any questions that you want to bring before us, or if you just say, no, we got this and we'll see it at final plat, we can just have that short conversation then. So,
So would this be continued to the next meeting?
Marla,
No, it'd be continued to October 20th. But like I said,
Aren't we just,
I would be pretty well
aren't-
underway on the draft decision by that point.
wouldn't we be just opening and closing, assuming that Brian's put in his notes?
Yes.
So is there any reason why we can't do it on October 6th?
If you don't want anything from me, we can do it on October 6th.
yeah, I don't
Well,
think we
thought
need,
the
I think
purpose of
it's,
going- I thought the purpose of going to October 20th was to give Marla time to work up a draft decision. And I don't think meeting on October 6th or October 20th is going to expedite the approval of this, since if we meet on October 6th, we're not going to have anything from Marla anyway. If we meet on October 20th, it'll give Brian time to review it and, you know, formulate any questions he may have, and Marla time to have a draft decision, or at least sort of her first pass with any of the issues that she needs input from us on. You know, I don't see we need to rush, and I think we should respect staff in terms of what they feel they need.
Marla, didn't you say, because we just continued the airport to October 6th, and you said that filled it up?
Yeah, that's for the purposes of my time, not for the purposes of the evening.
Right.
well, I would move that we continue preliminary plat application SD 2016 of O'Brien Farm Road to October 20th.
A second.
Seconded by Mark. Roll call, Don,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
and Matt Coda votes aye, 6-0.
Don't forget
We're gonna
Alyssa.
continue to,
Don't forget Alyssa.
oh, sorry, Alyssa,
Aye.
sorry, Alyssa. Alyssa's at an aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's 6. 6-0-0-1. On October 26th. Okay. Don't go anywhere. Continue, agenda item number 6, continue master plan MP 2001 of O'Brien Farm Road LLC to amend a previously approved master plan for a planned unit development to develop 39.16 acres with a maximum 458 dwelling units and 45,000 square foot of office space. The amendment is to add 0.6 acres to zone 2A without changing the approvals, or use that zone for removal of 0.6 acres from zone 7 at 255 Kennedy Drive. Who is here for the applicant?
Andrew Gale.
Evan Langfeld.
Now, I see in our packet. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
I see in our packet, staff has previously prepared a draft decision for this application. However, in light of the applicant's proposal to develop lands off zone 7 beyond the area of this proposed amendment discussed in the September 15th staff comments SD 2016, staff recommends the board offer the applicant the opportunity to amend this request for additional land. Okay, so applicant,
Yeah,
here's the opportunity.
this
Go
is
ahead.
the sort of weird, complex, thing where these different approvals are coming together. I think we settled on the fact that the conditional use application can work, in which case it would seem that we don't need to alter this amendment. I think we probably should leave it open and just close it with the other one, just in case anything comes up as we start looking at the parking. But I think we'll also be talk to Marla in the next couple of weeks about whatever this conditional use application that we need to file is, so we can fill that out and get it in. Just make sure there are no hiccups before we close this as well. But I think that conversation sort of proved this out.
So is that your interpretation, Marla, that we should?
Yeah,